Part 1, First Contact and Chaos. The emergency alert blared through the corridors of Earth Defense Station Omega-7, its harsh tone cutting through the usual hum of machinery. Commander Thaddeus Sterling rubbed his weathered face, wondering what crisis awaited him this time. At 53, he'd seen enough alien encounters to fill several lifetimes, but nothing could have prepared him for what materialized on his holographic display. "Sir, we've got an unidentified vessel approaching," Lieutenant Petra Walsh announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. It's massive. Nearly 3 times the size of our largest carrier." The ship that appeared before them resembled a crystalline cathedral floating through space, its surface refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. As Sterling studied the vessel's configuration, a transmission cut through their communications channel. "Earth Defense Station, this is Princess Nixera of the Celestial Dominion. We request immediate docking privileges and assistance with a situation." Sterling exchanged glances with his bridge crew. The Celestial Dominion was known throughout the galaxy as a highly advanced civilization, but they rarely ventured this far into human space. "This is Commander Sterling. Please state the nature of your situation, Your Highness." A hollow laugh echoed through the channel. "Commander, I'm afraid that's classified. But I assure you, it's in everyone's best interest to grant us access immediately." Before Sterling could respond, Petra's console erupted with warnings. "Sir, I'm detecting an energy signature unlike anything we've ever seen. It's coming from inside their ship." The princess's voice turned urgent. "Commander, please. Our containment fields are failing. We need your station's specialized facilities." Sterling had spent 3 decades in the Earth Defense Force by trusting his instincts. Right now, they were screaming at him to deny the request. But diplomatic incidents with the Celestial Dominion could spark interstellar conflicts. "Permission granted, Your Highness. Docking Bay 17. But be advised, any hostile action will be met with immediate force." As the crystalline ship maneuvered toward the designated bay, Sterling assembled a welcome party including their chief xenobiologist, Dr. Juniper Blackwood, and a full security detail. The air grew thick with tension as they waited for the airlock to cycle. Princess Nixera emerged first, her appearance striking even by alien standards. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent quality, and her 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, glowed with an inner light. But it was the creature behind her that caused every human present to take an involuntary step back. The beast stood twice as tall as a human, its body covered in what appeared to be living shadows. 6 limbs ended in crystalline claws that clicked against the station's floor, and its head housed multiple rows of eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A low growl emanated from somewhere within its mass, causing the station's very structure to vibrate. "Commander," Nixera said smoothly, "meet the Shadow Maw. The last of its kind, and currently our biggest problem." Dr. Blackwood stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "Fascinating. I've never seen anything like it. The way it seems to bend light around itself." The Shadow Maw's head snapped toward her, and several security officers raised their weapons. The creature's form rippled, shadows dancing across its surface like oil on water. "I wouldn't get too close," Nixera warned. "It's already destroyed 3 of our containment facilities. We thought we could control it, use it for research, but..." She trailed off, her lower eyes dimming slightly. "It's becoming more powerful. More resistant to our methods. We need help containing it before." A deafening screech cut through the air, and the Shadow Maw's form expanded suddenly, tendrils of darkness lashing out in all directions. Security officers opened fire, but their energy weapons seemed to be absorbed into the creature's mass. "Everyone back!" Sterling shouted, pulling Dr. Blackwood away from a writhing tendril. "Seal off this section." But as chaos erupted in the docking bay, a strange sound cut through the pandemonium, laughter. All eyes turned to find Officer Raj Patel, a junior security member, standing calmly amid the chaos. The Shadowmaw's tendrils had frozen in mid-strike, its countless eyes fixed on the laughing human. Sorry, Raj said, wiping tears from his eyes. It reminds me of my cousin's cat back in Mumbai. Always putting on a big show, but really just wanting attention. Before anyone could stop him, Raj stepped forward, hand extended. The Shadowmaw's form contracted slightly, its growl shifting to a different pitch. Officer Patel, stand down. Sterling ordered, but Nixara raised a hand. Wait, she whispered. Look. The Shadowmaw was changing, its shadowy mass becoming more defined, more solid. It lowered its head, all 3 meters of it, to Raj's level, multiple eyes blinking in sequence. You're just scared, aren't you? Raj said softly. New place, lots of strange people pointing weapons at you. No wonder you're acting out. To everyone's astonishment, the creature made a sound that could only be described as a purr, its shadowy form condensing further until it looked almost solid. Sterling watched in amazement as the junior officer seemingly defused a situation that had the potential for interstellar disaster. Princess Nixara's 4 eyes were wide with disbelief, her composed demeanor cracking for the first time. Impossible, she breathed. We've tried everything, advanced technology, psychic dampeners, force fields. And your officer just talks to it? Sometimes, Raj said, now scratching what appeared to be the Shadowmaw's chin, the simplest solution is the best one. He was probably just lonely in that containment field. The creature had fully solidified now, its form settling into something that looked like a cross between a panther and a crystalline sculpture, still wreathed in living shadows but no longer threatening to consume the entire docking bay. Sterling stepped forward, careful to keep his movements slow. Your Highness, I believe we might be able to help each other after all. But perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more comfortable, and with fewer weapons pointed at our new friend. Nixara nodded slowly, her royal composure returning even as her eyes remained fixed on the remarkable scene before her. Indeed, Commander. I believe this visit may prove far more interesting than I initially anticipated. As they led the way to the station's conference room, the Shadowmaw padded along beside Raj, its many eyes now gleaming with curiosity rather than menace. Sterling couldn't help but smile. In his 3 decades of service, he'd learned that the universe had a way of surprising you just when you thought you'd seen it all. The first contact with the Celestial Dominion had taken an unexpected turn, and somehow, a junior security officer's simple act of compassion had opened the door to what promised to be an extraordinary adventure. Little did any of them know, this was only the beginning of a story that would reshape the relationship between humans and the Celestial Dominion forever. Would you like me to continue with Part 2? Part 2, The Beast Whisperer's Gift. The conference room aboard Omega-7 had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Commander Sterling sat at one end of the polished table, Princess Nixara at the other, while the Shadowmaw lounged contentedly near Officer Raj Patel, its crystalline claws carefully retracted to avoid scratching the station's flooring. Let me understand this correctly, Sterling said, reviewing the holographic data before him. This creature, the Shadowmaw, was discovered in the ruins of an ancient civilization on the edges of your territory? Nixara's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Yes. We believed it to be a weapon, a guardian created by the ancients. Our scientists spent years trying to understand its capabilities, but... She gestured to where the creature was now playfully nudging Raja's hand for more attention. We never considered this approach. Dr. Juniper Blackwood, who had been quietly taking readings on her quantum scanner, looked up with excitement. The biological readings are extraordinary. It seems to exist partially in our dimension and partially in, well, somewhere else. The shadows aren't just an aesthetic, they're quantum fluctuations. Which is why our containment fields kept failing, Nixara added. It can shift between dimensions at will. We thought we could control it through force, but... Raj spoke up, still scratching behind what appeared to be the creature's ear. Sometimes understanding comes before control. Back home, I worked with rescued street dogs. The ones that were treated badly, they needed patience first, trust second, and training last. The shadow maw made a sound like purring thunder, its crystalline features catching the room's light in mesmerizing patterns. Its multiple eyes, once terrifying, now held an almost playful intelligence. Officer Patel, Sterling said thoughtfully, how would you feel about a temporary reassignment? Before Raj could answer, the station's emergency sirens began blaring. Lieutenant Walsh's voice came through the comm system, Commander. We've got multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're Dominion vessels, sir. Nixura stood sharply. No. They weren't supposed to follow me. I explicitly ordered them to. The conference room's viewport filled with the sight of 3 more crystalline ships, their designs more angular and militant than Nixura's vessel. A new voice cut through their communications. Princess Nixura, it boomed, by order of the High Council, you are to return immediately. The weapon must be secured. The Shadowmaw's form began to ripple, shadows dancing across its surface as it sensed the tension in the room. Raj quickly placed a calming hand on its neck. High Commander Voss, Nixura replied, her voice ice-cold. You overstep your authority. I am conducting a diplomatic mission. With respect, Your Highness, Voss interrupted, the Council believes you've been compromised. The weapon is too valuable to risk in human hands. Stand down, or we will be forced to take action. Sterling watched the Shadow Maw closely. The creature wasn't aggressive now, it was afraid. Its form kept shifting between solid and shadow, pressing closer to Raj with each fluctuation. Dr. Blackwood, he whispered, those quantum readings, could they be weaponized? The xenobiologist's eyes widened. The Dominion ship's shields operate on quantum harmonics. If the Shadowmaw's dimensional shifting could be synchronized with their shield frequency. It's not a weapon, Raj said firmly, loud enough for everyone to hear. Look at him, he's terrified. Whatever the ancients created him for, it wasn't this. The Shadowmaw's many eyes fixed on Raj, and something passed between them, an understanding that transcended species and even dimensions. The creature's form solidified fully, more defined than they'd seen it yet, and it stood tall. Nixura watched this transformation with wonder. All this time, we never saw. High Commander, stand down. That's a royal order. I'm sorry, Your Highness, but the Council's authority supersedes yours in matters of planetary security. Prepare to be boarded. Sterling had seen enough conflicts to know when diplomacy was failing. Station defensive systems online. Lieutenant Walsh, tactical alert. But before anyone could make another move, the Shadowmaw stepped forward. Its crystalline parts began to resonate, creating a harmonic tone that made everyone's teeth vibrate. The shadows surrounding it expanded, not chaotically like before, but with purpose. He's not running, Dr. Blackwood whispered, checking her readings. He's reaching out. The shadow tendrils extended through the station's hull, passing through solid matter as if it didn't exist, and touched the Dominion ships. Immediately, their shields flickered and failed. Impossible. Voss's voice crackled. All ships, emergency protocols. The Shadowmaw wasn't attacking. Instead, images began appearing in everyone's minds, ancient cities built of crystal and shadow, beings of pure energy walking among corporeal creatures, and a sense of purpose, not to destroy or conquer, but to bridge. To connect. It's a translator, Nixura breathed. The ancients didn't create a weapon, they created an ambassador. The mental connection faded, leaving everyone in the room changed. The Shadowmaw returned to Raja's side, its form now a perfect balance of solid crystal and living shadow, all of its eyes reflecting a deep intelligence. High Commander Voss's voice, when it came again, was subdued. Princess. The Council must be informed of this development. Oh, they will be, Nyxera said, a new authority in her voice. But first, I believe we have a diplomatic summit to conduct. Commander Sterling, might we impose on your hospitality a bit longer? Sterling looked at the Shadow Maw, now calmly sitting beside the most junior officer on his station, and smiled. I think we can arrange something. Officer Patel, it seems you've just been promoted to Chief Xenological Relations Officer. The universe, Sterling reflected, had a way of finding balance, not through force or control, but through understanding and connection. As humans and Dominion officials began discussing the implications of their discovery, the Shadow Maw settled in contentedly, finally having found its true purpose after eons of waiting. And Raj Patel, the unexpected diplomat, simply smiled and gave his new friend another scratch behind its crystalline ears. Sometimes, the greatest gifts came not from power or technology, but from the simple ability to see past fear and find the connection waiting on the other side. Would you like me to continue with Part 3? Part 3, Shadows of the Past. The following days aboard Omega-7 transformed the space station into an unprecedented hub of interspecies diplomacy. As Dominion scholars and Earth scientists worked together to understand the Shadow Maw's true nature, Dr. Blackwood made a breakthrough that would change everything. Look at these markings, she exclaimed, projecting a hologram of the crystalline patterns along the creature's form. The Shadow Maw, now nicknamed Shadow by Raj, watched its own image with multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Commander Sterling, Princess Nyxera, and Raj gathered around the display in the newly established Xenological Research Lab. The hologram showed intricate patterns that pulsed with an inner light. These aren't just decorative, Dr. Blackwood continued. They're a language, a complex mathematical sequence that repeats throughout its crystalline structure. And when we compare it to ancient ruins found across both human and Dominion space, Nyxera's 4 eyes widened. They match. By the eternal stars, they match perfectly. Sterling leaned closer to the projection. Are you saying this creature is some kind of living record? Before anyone could answer, Shadow stood and approached the hologram. Its form rippled, and suddenly the lab filled with three-dimensional images, star maps, mathematical formulae, and scenes from a civilization that existed when both humans and the Dominion were still learning to make fire. The architects, Nyxera whispered. The legends were true. Through the projected images, they watched as an ancient race of beings created vast networks of quantum bridges between galaxies. These architects hadn't just been advanced, they'd transcended traditional physics, existing simultaneously across multiple dimensions. But why create shadow? Raj asked, reaching out to steady the creature as the images began to flicker. Why leave behind a living library? A new series of images appeared, showing a terrible conflict. Dark entities moved between stars, consuming light and life. The architects fought back not with weapons, but with understanding, creating beings that could bridge the gap between dimensions, between different forms of life. They weren't warriors, Dr. Blackwood realized, furiously taking notes. They were mediators. Diplomats. They created the Shadow Maws to communicate with the very forces that threatened to destroy them. Shadow's projections showed more Shadow Maws, dozens of them, each serving as a bridge between different species, different dimensions. But then came images of decline, the architects facing some internal crisis, their civilization fragmenting. They didn't die out, Sterling said slowly. They evolved. Transcended even their own advanced form. But they left behind guardians, not to fight wars, but to prevent them. Nyxera's royal composure cracked slightly. All this time, we thought we were finding weapons. Instead, we were finding teachers. She turned to Shadow. How many more of your kind are out there, waiting to be understood rather than controlled? The creature's response came in another series of projections, star maps showing locations across the galaxy, places where more of its kind slept, waiting for civilizations mature enough to understand their true purpose. Raj stepped forward, placing a hand on Shadow's crystalline surface. That's why you chose to respond to kindness instead of force. You were waiting for us to be ready. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Lieutenant Walsh's voice came through the comm, "Commander. We're detecting massive energy signatures approaching through subspace. They're like nothing we've ever seen." The lab's viewport filled with swirling darkness as tears in spacetime began to appear. Through these rifts came shapes that defied description, the very entities the architects had sought to communicate with eons ago. Shadow stood tall, its form perfectly balanced between solid crystal and living shadow. It looked at Raj, then at Nixera and Sterling, and projected one final image, different species working together, using understanding instead of fear to face the unknown. "It's not just about humans and the Dominion," Dr. Blackwood said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Shadow was preparing us for this moment. First contact with something truly alien." The darkness beyond the viewport seemed to pulse with intelligence, waiting. Shadow moved to the center of the lab, its crystalline parts beginning to resonate with that same harmonic tone they'd heard before. Sterling looked at Princess Nixera, then at Raj, who hadn't left Shadow's side. "Well," he said with a slight smile, "I suppose this is why they called them ambassadors, and not weapons." As the station prepared for another first contact, this time with beings from beyond the boundaries of known space, Shadow began its work as a bridge between worlds. The true test of both human and Dominion civilization was about to begin, not with weapons or shields, but with the willingness to understand. And Raj Patel, who had started this journey with nothing more than kindness and intuition, stood ready to help translate not just between species, but between dimensions themselves. The past had given them the tools, now it was time to build a future that the architects themselves might never have imagined. Would you like me to continue with Part 4? Part 4, The Bridge Between Worlds. The beings from subspace, which Dr. Blackwood had termed void entities, hovered beyond Omega-7's viewport like living constellations of anti-light. Shadow stood at the center of the command deck, its crystalline form resonating with frequencies that bridged dimensions. Translation matrix functioning at 72%, Dr. Blackwood announced, monitoring the quantum harmonics flowing through her specially modified equipment. They're trying to communicate." The first message that came through Shadow's translation shook everyone present: "You have awakened the bridge. You have learned to see beyond force. Perhaps you are ready." Commander Sterling stepped forward, Nixera at his side. "Ready for what?" The response came in waves of sensation rather than words, Shadow's crystalline patterns pulsing as it converted concepts beyond human or Dominion understanding, the great joining. The healing of the divide. What your ancestors called the convergence. Raj noticed Shadow trembling slightly, the effort of translation clearly taking its toll. He moved closer, placing a steadying hand on the creature's crystalline surface. Immediately, the translations became clearer. "Eons ago, the void entities continued, your dimension and ours were one. The architects sought to rebuild that bridge, to heal the cosmic fracture that separated us. But they ascended before their work was complete, leaving behind the seeds of unity." "The Shadowmaws," Nixera breathed. "They're not just translators, they're literal bridges between dimensions." "Correct, Starchild," came the response. "But a bridge requires anchors on both sides. The architects could create the bridges, but they needed species capable of understanding, of moving beyond fear and force, to maintain them." Dr. Blackwood's instruments suddenly lit up with new readings. "Commander, the quantum field around the station is shifting. It's like reality itself is becoming more flexible." Through Shadow's translations, they learned that the universe was far more interconnected than either humans or the Dominion had imagined. The void entities weren't invaders or destroyers, they were the other half of existence, seeking reunification not through conquest, but through understanding. But why now? Sterling asked. Why reveal all this at this moment? The answer came with a surge of images, stars dying, galaxies spinning apart, the very fabric of spacetime beginning to fray. The separation grows too wide, the void entities explained. Without the bridges, both our realms will eventually collapse. The architects knew this. They seeded the galaxy with shadow moths, waiting for species evolved enough to help rebuild the connections. Raj felt Shadow's crystalline surface warm under his hand. That's why you responded to kindness, he said softly. You needed to know we could handle connection before you revealed the true scope of your purpose. A new set of readings appeared on Dr. Blackwood's screens. The quantum harmonics are stabilizing. It's like they're teaching us their mathematical language through shadow. Princess Nixera stepped forward, her royal training giving way to scientific curiosity. If we can understand their mathematics, we can help maintain the bridges. Our two civilizations together. 3 civilizations, Sterling corrected, nodding toward the void entities. Maybe that was the architect's plan all along. Not just peace between human and dominion, but a greater peace, a cosmic balance. Shadow's form rippled, and suddenly the command deck filled with a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Points of light showed where other shadow moths slept, waiting to be awakened. The void entities added their own perspective, revealing tiers in spacetime that needed healing. A joint mission, Sterling said, looking at Nixera. Human ingenuity, Dominion technology, and the wisdom of the void entities, all working together through the shadow moths to prevent the collapse of reality itself. It would change everything, Nixera replied. Our understanding of physics, of consciousness, of existence itself. Change is the nature of existence, the void entities transmitted through shadow. The question is, are you ready to be its agents? As if in response, Shadow's crystalline parts began to glow with an inner light, while its shadows seemed to deepen, creating a perfect balance between dimensions. The creature that had been seen as a weapon, then as a translator, was revealing its true nature, a key to unlocking the next stage of cosmic evolution. Raj watched as human and Dominion scientists began working together, using Shadow's translations to understand the mathematics of dimensional bridging. The universe, he realized, had been waiting for this moment, not for one species to conquer or dominate, but for different forms of life to learn to work together. Commander, Lieutenant Walsh called out, we're receiving transmissions from Earth Command and the Dominion High Council. They're requesting immediate updates on what they're calling the Unity Protocol. Sterling and Nixera shared a knowing look. The journey that had begun with a simple act of kindness toward a mysterious creature was about to transform 3 civilizations, and perhaps reality itself.